doing DeFi, greatest in the world, and they finally about to see why. What you know about XRD? I'm smart money, I ain't never on a decline. What you know about NFTs? It's not just Ace, when you finally gonna realize you need scalability, need more utility, then you better call on these guys. I'm going radical, I'm going Radix, I'm going radical, I'm going Radix. Hyperspeed DeFi, never on a decline, building the future, I feel like a savage.
Hello and welcome. I am Piers Ridyard, CEO of RDX Works, a core developer of the decentralized finance protocol Radix, a public ledger entirely focused on bringing DeFi into the mainstream. This is our podcast, The DeFi Download, a show about decentralized finance and all things crypto, where we dive into the details of the projects, assets and services that are powering the DeFi and Web3 revolution. Today, I have Aleksander, co-founder of Sky Mavis, creators of Axie Infinity, the biggest blockchain game ever made, which peaked at over 2.7 million daily active users. Aleksander, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks, Piers. Happy to be here to have a conversation. I guess not only about DeFi, but a little bit about gaming too. But actually, those things are quite connected. So there's a lot to unwrap here.
Yeah, I feel like they're the same. I actually think they're the same industry. I feel like we talk about DeFi and like NFTs as being like separate ideas, or like in-game economies as separate ideas. They're all basically the same building blocks, right?
Yeah, I mean, so when we look at some of the or what actually made the hyper growth of Axie Infinity possible, it was actually the Uniswap protocol at first, which kind of started it all. So before that, it wasn't really natural to trade in game like utility items such as Smooth Love Potion or Small Love Potion, as it originally was called. So when we started releasing that, Uniswap had just started getting some popularity,
right.
And then it was actually our players that made the first LP pool on Uniswap, so people could trade Small Love Potion for ETH. And that's really how people started to understand that, hey, I can actually play a game and then earn some tokens inside that game. And if there is enough demand for that token, then, actually I turned my time playing a game into Ether and real money. And that's just like, oh shit.
Yeah.
That when people started realizing that's really when things started to take off.
That's really interesting. And I think that's like just another example of what people, I think, miss often with things like Uniswap is the genius wasn't to just compete with large asset trading pairs like, sort of Bitcoin versus USDC. The actual genius was that a community could create liquidity around long tail assets. And suddenly things like, I didn't even know it used to be called Small Love Potion. Small Love Potion. How did the change come? Why did it go from small to smooth?
Yeah, I think let's start a little bit earlier.
Okay.
Axie Infinity was founded early in 2018. Peak bear market there. I mean, the market has just topped, and then things started going down. We had this vision to make Axie Infinity, which was supposed to be a game that we wanted to play. After having some bad experience with CryptoKitties, which was the first NFT game out of all time, if it could even be called a game. So when we played that game, we wanted to make something a little bit better, and then we started up with Axie, and we iterated across many different versions across all of 2018, and then early on in 2019, we actually changed some things here and there, and we restarted making a big part of the game. And then throughout 2019, we kept iterating. And then early in 2020, that's when we released the Axie Classic Battle game that people know it.
Right.
And with that game, also revamped a big part of the token economy. So throughout 2018 and 2019, the game that we had, there wasn't really any way to earn any tokenized rewards at all. So it had actually limited success. And then early in 2020, when we disconnected a part of the game, so basically 2018, 2019, you could earn experience points, and then you needed to use them to breed an Axie. Starting in 2020, we disconnected experience points and we turned experience points into Small Love Potions. So when you were grinding Axie or the new Axie game, you earned Small Love Potions, and you needed to use those to breed for a new Axie. And then those tokens then were generated as ERC20 tokens on the Ethereum network, which then again, kind of led to that liquidity pool being created. And then things started growing and growing and growing. And it really, really took off when we migrated all of our assets off Ethereum into a Ronin network due to too many gas fees on Ethereum. So that's kind of a very high level summary of what happened.
And there's a lot to unpack there. So let's start from the very start. Let's start from like before you were doing even thinking about building games. What were you? Well, even thinking about building a competitor or a better version of CryptoKitties, what were you doing?
Yeah, so I've my background is actually working within the Norwegian state, something totally unrelated to blockchain. So I was working there, but at the same time I was doing that, I was kind of my day job, and then I was playing games. I was playing competitive. I was a competitive gamer for I think 10 years. I played competitive Warcraft 3, Dota, and then Dota 2. And I wanted to get into the gaming industry, but I felt it was very it wasn't really there wasn't enough space. Like it felt like everything had been discovered. Right. So when I then learned about NFTs and blockchain, I was like, oh wow, this makes perfect sense for games. Right. And that's really when I took a deep dive into it and met Trung and Andy and Jeff and Masamune, who's the artist and the other co-founders of Axie.
Right.
And then we decided to make this game. So we all met online. So that was.
And had you met through gaming?
Yeah, that's right. Well, I met Trung and Jeff through CryptoKitties, and then I traveled to Vietnam. I lived there, and that's where I met Andy and Masamune.
And why did you want to get into gaming? If you felt like everything had been created, if everything had been discovered in gaming, why did you have a desire to build games still?
No, so I actually thought it was. I think it's about creativity and it's about having an impact. I think like if you spend a lot of time doing something, you always have this drive to, I wish how cool would it not be to be a part of making something like this or to have an impact on this type of industry? And then you have all of these great ideas. They are doing it like this. I would probably do it like that. And that's really kind of how you iterate from something. So I think first step is like copy is the best form of flattery, right? You try to iterate on what they've made, and then eventually you realize that we can actually make something that's probably better ourselves. That's really how that came to be.
In your journey, I always find that when you go from being a consumer to a creator, when you're a consumer, it's easy just to miss all the things that make something great and just pick out all of the flaws and just be like, that bit sucks. Like, I can't believe they're so idiotic they would do that. And then as you go towards being a creator of something, and I'm just thinking about from the point of view of building businesses, right? Like of products and services, you start to appreciate quite how much like thought and genius has gone into building something, and like actually the bits that annoy you are like the very tiny bits of the much larger engineering puzzle. At least that's been my experience. Did you feel the same about games before and after building one?
Yeah, usually I'm incredibly impatient. So I want things to happen fast, and I feel like if you say something, you should do it. Right. So if I'm saying I should deliver on time, then I expect that you'll deliver on time. It's a very Norwegian type of thing. And when you work in tech, it's very different, right? Because there are so many unknowns, right? So there are known unknowns, and then there are unknown unknowns that you kind of just have to assume will happen over time. And like the more complex the products become, the more you appreciate simplicity, and the more you appreciate just actually being able to deliver something. And as you said, like how hard it is to actually make good products and like UI UX. And when we look at what happened in Web 2, right, the UI UX that we take for granted when we enter web pages, like that's been perfected over, 10, 15 years. Yeah. And then we look at Web 3 and it's just like, it takes me back to like ISDN days.
Right.
And it's the exact, literally same thing as when you're connecting to the internet, like writing on like fan pages of random like internet sites. Like it's just so bad still,
right,
even after all of these years. But yeah, it's starting to get better. But definitely there's been a lot of learning, and I think that gives me an extreme level of sympathy for community members that come into it and be like, why don't you just do it like that? At least at the start, it was very much like that I feel like I could understand them very well. I think as time has passed, like now we've been building for over 5 years, almost 5 years. And I feel like I'm getting a little bit disconnected from maybe community in some cases, because sometimes I find myself that the asks are so unreasonable.
Right.
Why don't you just do this like next week? I'm like, dude, we have a roadmap. We have all of these plans. Like there's a vision, there's a mission for the company. Right. Like all of these things are kind of connected. So you really have to think like, how are you actually growing your company, right? This is going to be from the top down, or from the bottom up or top down, right? And I think like community members, sometimes they're like, oh, they're from the top. Oh, you should just do that. But sometimes you have to build from the bottom up and you're like, okay, brick by brick by brick. And then you'll get to the top, which then again is kind of the consumer facing product. So there's been a lot of learnings there. And sometimes we make mistakes, but yeah, I guess you have probably the same experience.
Yeah. And like each time this community scales, it changes its nature. And so like that also makes a big difference, because like when you first start and you have a small number of like people going and having a chat and popping in and popping out is easy. And then as it gets bigger and bigger, it becomes harder and harder to have a conversation. And that changes your perspective of things as well, I think. So let's start with the first version of Axie. You've seen CryptoKitties, and you know the game is basically breeding for rarity, where you can take a couple of CryptoKitties and you can put them together and you can get new CryptoKitties out of it. What did you see was broken about that? What as a gamer was going, this is stupid?
I mean, so I think, first of all, I was super attracted to the fact of composability. And I felt that, wow, okay, I can breed cats and then I can potentially use them in something else. I was like, wow, I can maybe put my cat in Decentraland. Like, that's fucking amazing.
Right.
Oh, wow, I actually own my CryptoKitty. And I thought maybe first I own the IP. I was like, oh, okay, can I put this on my t-shirt? It's like that general journey that a lot of people go through when they have NFTs. And then I felt that there was a disconnect between me and the core team in the CryptoKitty community, right? They were Dapper Labs. So they had all this like grandiose vision for their main company, right? And they felt like CryptoKitties, or from the outside, it seemed like CryptoKitties was just like this proof of concept, right, where like there wasn't really any thought process going into this to the amount of supply of CryptoKitties coming into the ecosystem,
right?
Versus the amount of players and the amount of things that you can do with them. So there was like a lot of inflation happening there with the cats. And it's funny, like now when I look at Axie, I'm like, okay, yeah, Axies, they inflated too, but it's related to a lot of people actually wanting them to play with them.
Right.
And CryptoKitties, like you could just collect, and that was kind of it.
Right.
That in itself is a very powerful thing, though, to collect something, right? There are many collectible assets in the real world, right? In the physical space. So just having that in the digital one was like a massive unlock. So I would say like it was more of a collectible game than anything else. Right. And I felt, wow, I mean, I love collecting, but I love playing more. I love interacting with my digital assets more. And I had like played a lot of Diablo 3 as well, and I love the real money auction house. And I was like, oh wow, this can actually make some money if you play this game.
Right.
Yeah, that sounds amazing to me. People can give something back. And then we started iterating and testing out various things, and it took a long time to actually figure out that unlock with like disconnecting experience points from experience points to SLP, and like to actually understand what impact that would have was impossible.
That wasn't until like iteration 3, right?
Yeah, so we shipped actually like an idle battle game. I think we had like the first time we shipped it, maybe we had like 50 users or something. And then, we kept grinding. It was really hard. Nobody cared at all.
But that's a great starting audience. 50 users is a great starting audience. It means you can talk to a lot of them. It means that you can sort of have more of those qualitative conversations rather than just quantitative ones.
Yeah. I think, Axie was always about that early community, right? Those people that we had there from the beginning. I think we initially had the Axie, like the initial NFT sale. I'm not sure how many people it attracted. I would say something between 200 to 400 people. And those people were there in Discord. And a lot of those people that were there from the beginning, they're still there. Like they still hold on to those rare Axies and they're still chatting, and they're like mega whales now, right, in the Axie community, obviously. Right. And we've had like riots happen there. People have like, I think we went from 400 to like, people gave up like late 2018. And then we had like maybe 100 people left. And it looked like really bleak. The company had 1 month of runway left because we held a lot of our money in Ether.
Right. And ETH wasn't doing great at this point.
It was like a disaster. I was sitting in my basement of my fiance's mother. I'm like trying to pitch a VC investor, like, hey. And then it was like nobody cared at all about anything that we were doing. It was like really hard.
Right.
So what happened afterwards was we had a land sale. And we managed to get some runway there, and then shortly after that, we closed our seed round from from Animoca Brands, who were actually one of the absolute few believers
Yeah.
in the space at that time.
Yeah.
And also Hashed from Korea, which were very, very important, and a couple of others, like really key investors. But they actually believed and they saw the power of the community of like the Axie players, because some of them were like taking Axie tattoos even back then,
Right.
which was incredibly powerful,
Right.
because they believed in the long-term vision of what we were making. But they weren't there for the game at the start. They like the real game, the Axie game, for the longest period of time has been that like meta game, which is Discord, which is like just chilling with the community.
Right.
And I think a lot of like crypto NFT projects, they realized that in 2020, 2021,
Right.
but like Axie had already done that for 2.5 years. Right. And there were also many other projects that did it similarly. But yeah, I would say that was our superpower, kind of being there like every day. And Jeff, or Jiho, is like a superstar in that sense. Like he loves being on Discord. So I think he still has the most messages on the Axie Discord to this day.
Still, that's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So like what then was the Axie vision? And was the artwork the same as it is today, or have you iterated on that as well?
I mean, over time, I would say the Axie vision has expanded to become something more than just a simple game. I mean, Axie is about collecting and like I would say interacting with your cute pets in many different type of games.
Yeah.
And then kind of having that one universe, which is kind of that the Axie character itself, which kind of connects all these things. So you can think about it as kind of we're making an interoperable world, but within the same IP, right? So what I would say is like the difference here is if you look at something like the Sandbox, right? They're dragging in all types of IP into their game universe. In Axie, we also have a game universe, but we also only want to use Axie characters for now. And we might strategically partner with other teams to like let them be a part of our universe. So it's more centralized in that approach. But we believe that that's the best start for now to kind of build that core audience that loves the IP. And then we can move on from there. So at the end of the day, our like long-term vision, I think, is the same as actually Sandbox, where we want the Axie Infinity virtual world, where you have your Axies, you can interact with many type of games and experiences, and you have like your game character that's traveling through all of these things. It's just like a different type of approach to get to that end stage. Because if you have like just a platform first, then you're dependent on so many other people building like these breakthrough applications or games so that you can get all these users. Meanwhile, in Axie, we are the ones who are building the first applications on top of this like NFT platform. Basically, the way I see it, that all NFTs are platforms, right? You can build anything on top of them, and we do that too. So we build our own games.
So how would that like how would that approach differ from something like Flow, right? Because like Flow is obviously Dapper Labs, who created CryptoKitties. They created their own blockchain and see themselves as a platform for NFTs. How does what you're doing, or does it differ? I mean, it doesn't have to.
I mean, so the way I see it in a different stage. When I say NFTs are platform, I mean like the NFT itself can access many different points, but on top of the NFT, there needs to be like metadata, there needs to be IP, there needs to be something that kind of connects collections, right, in one piece, right? So Axie would be an example, Bored Apes, like all these other, let's say, Pudgy Penguins, right? So the difference between something like Axie and Pudgy Penguins and Bored Apes is that we're making like our own connected universe with all of these Axie-specific type of games.
Right.
Meanwhile, in the kind of Bored Apes, Pudgy Penguins, like you have a hodgepodge of many different type of games. There doesn't seem to be any kind of cohesive vision for how these games are connected together at all. Like some people are just building something here, some people are just building something there. But meanwhile in Axie, like we have the Axie Land game, the Axie Origins game, and then the Builders Program games, which like a lot of people are using the Axie IP for. And then like the kind of the connected entity behind it is the Axie Infinity company, which is then kind of pushing forward and supporting various initiatives in different type of ways. So I think like it's much more strategic in a sense, and we're trying to push this into our direction where people actually come into this universe and they have something to do. Because when I look at like a big problem with, for example, games or virtual worlds is like right now everything is kind of being connected. You're calling it a metaverse to an extent, but a big problem there is that people don't have anything to do. Like they get dropped into, like for example, Decentraland or like what is going to call it, other deeds, or it doesn't matter really what it is. But if you come into a place and you have nothing to do, then why would you spend a lot of time there?
Right.
I think that's really the main problem that I have with these virtual worlds that they're just a virtual world, like they're nothing else. I think it makes much more sense to have a game and then turn it into a virtual world after. Right. So if you look at something like Fortnite, to me, that's much, much more of a virtual world than really anything else we've seen today. Because there people come in and they play, they socialize, they have fun. It's the same as what's happening, for example, in World of Warcraft back in the day. People come in there, they have the avatar, they talk with each other. It's turning into something more than a game. Like it's a social platform, it's a hub. To me, that's really what we're trying to do out with Axie too. And that really takes a long time to get there. You need a lot of content, you need a lot of things for people to do, right? To connect with and to feel like they're a part of. And when you have that, then I think Axie, the first classic game that took off was really just the starting point, which then again is, okay, people discover the IP, they come in, they fall in love with it, and they're waiting for more content now.
I think people often miss the criticality of that social aspect of gaming. Like that's what people. It's almost like in some ways gaming becomes almost like the TV on in the background. Like you get your friends over to watch the football game, but they're there to hang out and chat. Like the football game is just the thing that like caused you to gather in the first place. And like the more that those games become established in people's lives, we'll play, FIFA or World of Warcraft or whatever. It's like it's a thing to do together that's fun, but the social aspect is why you keep coming back to it. But before we go there, because I think that you have some really interesting sort of insights on that, I want to just go back to this moment that you were having, a bad moment, like month of runway. There are riots in your Discord. It's mid bear market, and a lot of entrepreneurs are going to be feeling like that right now, right? There's going to be a lot of people out there who are going to be in a similar situation where they haven't got much runway left. The community is turning on them, and they're in this situation where it feels like things are going to end. So, like, where did you find your motivation from? How did you still pick up the phone with 1 month left of runway to keep trying, to keep fighting?
Yeah, I think for me, it was like, I really believe in this industry. I think like I first of all, this kind of, so I quit my job, I moved to Vietnam. I feel like I wanted to be in this industry so badly that I would basically do whatever it took to kind of, just be a part of it and to have an impact. And when we then suddenly didn't have anything left in 2018, early 2019, it's very similar to where we are today. And for many teams, I have no doubt. Like, right. It feels like it's almost like the exact, you're kind of going back in time. So what I felt is that if we can just like survive 1 month longer, then that's a lot. Like that gives us more time to find the right people who believed in our vision. And if we can survive another month after that, like it gives us more time to get out the products and to get out the for example, the land and to have some sales. And we already had this like, we just like to need to survive a little bit longer so that we can get out something which might find product market fit. I think you're basically, that's like a similar thing to any sort of startup. Like you're trying to find product market fit. You're struggling for it, you're reaching for it, but it always seems out of reach. Mm-hmm. But what we had was like community market fit. Mm-hmm. So we had this community, the core players that were in there, and we needed to sell something to them so that we could get some kind of runway, so we could keep building, right? Because not everything will be lost. So we had the land sale that was coming up, which was kind of really what we were working towards. And that, luckily, I think we sold something like for 300 or 400,000, 500 maybe it was. And I was just like, wow, this is insane. Now we can finally, like, that was enough for us because we were, I think, 18 people at the time. So that was enough for us to actually like, okay, we have a couple of months more runway. And that's really about the same time that I started to see some traction in the round as well. I finally got connected to the right people, which was also super hard. In terms of motivation, I really just felt that I think NFTs are going to change the world. Probably like blockchain. I feel like it's a new, more free internet. It's like a natural extension of the internet. And I always felt like people should own their digital game assets, their digital data. And I really despise that for example, the bigger platforms, they control everything. So I think that was a part of my motivation too. And I think, my vision my mission for Sky Mavis is that like I want to enable digital property rights for millions of people, starting with gamers. Like I think that's really what this is about. And I think if you have that kind of mission statement internalized, then I think you can really go through some hard times and still be motivated to just like, hey, this is super cool. And we still believe in this industry. So it was hard times, but I think we go through it. I'm happy about it.
Why do you think that NFTs are going to change the world? Like, what is it about being able to own digital property that is so impactful?
Yeah, I think like we've been in a part of the internet that's very kind of unnatural in a sense, where people haven't been able to own anything, right? You've just been kind of renting it out, and it doesn't necessarily make sense to me that I don't have I don't own my game history, for example. So when I told you like, okay, I used to compete, but I might as well be lying to you. Nobody knows. Like there's no truth online. Like you can Google my name. Like maybe you'll find a random forum post with like Norway versus Sweden or something like that, if it's not even out there. And I wish like I had an NFT like that proved that I was spending that time in that game, or some kind of immutable ledger or data or something like that couldn't be removed by the game studio. That was always there. And I think Ethereum is that thing, which is just like a perpetual proof of everything that you've done on chain.
Right.
It's incredibly powerful to me, and just shows that you are the person you're saying you are.
Right.
Like I despise falsehood, and I think it's much easier when you can actually just test. Like you don't have to, or you can use the chain to testify for you almost. Like I think that's incredibly powerful. Like in a fake world, like blockchain is the truth that we've all been looking for, and to me that's incredibly motivating. So yeah.
That's really interesting. And I think that it also speaks to something that is really important in society as well, like it or not like it, status games. I mean, Instagram is a status game, Facebook, Twitter, they're all status games, but so are gaming. Gaming is a status game as well. There is a way in which, one of the reasons that your early community that bought into the land sales or bought the early sort of NFTs, the Axies, stick around is because of their status within the community as a result of that. Like it gives them a sense of belonging and a sense of importance in those communities. And I think those are really important things. We all crave those things intrinsically. So this go like you talked about this idea of creating community product fit before creating product market fit. So let's talk about that first one, because I think again within Web3, DeFi, NFT space, gaming space, that first thing is actually almost more important than the second thing. So how did you guys create that? What do you think is the formula for that?
I think it's actually just caring a lot. Like of course there's the timing, right? You need to have good timing when you're starting something out so that you can get some attention. And once you have that attention, you really just need to nurture it and be there every single day, like chat with the people, like keep talking about, oh, this is what we're doing, this is how we're planning it. It's actually like investor relations, just community relations is pretty close to the same thing, right? A lot of like, if you have high trust, you don't probably have to communicate that much. But at the beginning, if like people are just like prone to do all sorts of other stuff, you really need to over communicate. Oh, now we're doing this, like we're leaking here and there. And like people are traveling, we're doing like, you need to just like over communicate everything that you're doing and get people on your side and make people believe in the same thing that you're doing, right? So you're not only are you doing that internally with your company, because you need to consistently like evangelize everyone, but you also need to evangelize in your community and make sure that like they're another part of the company, I would say. So you're kind of we're going at it from a new way, I would say, when you're creating these platforms or protocols or whatever you want to call them. It's like usually you would think about it like, okay, I'm making a product and these are my customers. Now you would say that our company and our community, we're together making kind of a universe here where they are part customer, part like partner, and that in itself is super tricky to get right, because you still have to sell to them and you still have to like, because they're not the same as an equity investor, right, for example, but they are stakeholders, just a different type of stakeholder,
Right.
which is super, super important if you're going to get it right, because they will be your biggest evangelists or your biggest like antagonists, I would say, if you do it wrong.
Right. And did you, I think for someone who's just starting out building a community, what would you say the biggest the biggest mistakes you can make are in doing that, aside from not being present? Like, let's say that you're present, but what is a way that you can be like negatively present versus positively present?
I think lying, like overall, like not being and saying that something is coming and delaying it all the time is also pretty bad. Like some of these things are inevitable to happen occasionally. So you have to be a little accountable. But there's a difference between being accountable and saying that you're sorry, for example. Like, I'm not really fond of saying that I'm sorry. What I would say is that in this case, we might have failed. We learned from it, and this is the next step. I think that's a much better way of saying that, hey guys, we're sorry that this happened. Like, that doesn't give them anything. It's just kind of a way for people to keep complaining. You need to take responsibility for what happened, and I think that's a lot of people are saying that we're sorry, we failed. But yeah, that like, they have their money in your product. They don't want you to be sorry. They want to see improvements. Like, why does this happen? Like, and I think that we're still learning to be accountable in many cases. And it's difficult, right? Because you're vulnerable in some cases if you say that. So yeah, that I think is hard, right? If you're not transparent enough. But there's also, like, if you go too hard on that scale, then nobody wants to know, like, if you have like a lot of deep problems in the company that you had to fire someone, or like, yeah, maybe you don't have to share absolutely everything, but usually you can say that, okay, we're heading in the right direction. Not everything is working out as planned, but we still have runway. We're still here, still believing in the vision, rather than coming out too late and saying it. But these are you will get to know your community. Some people are very impatient. And at the end of the day, like the head of community or the CEO oftentimes is actually the head of community at the same time. They're almost like politicians when these communities are so engaged. Yeah. So you're kind of involuntarily becoming a politician, and I'm not that great at it. Luckily, we have Jeff, who's amazing at it. Like, I might be too direct in many cases. So my writing, like as a Norwegian person, is sometimes super like, no, okay, yeah. Like, I don't want to, like, I don't have too much time to pat everyone like, oh yeah, this is always going to be okay. Like, I feel like I would rather get impact or action done. But it's a very American thing, I think, to be good at community, because you need to communicate a lot all the time.
Yes. And you need to project positivity, right? Like it's not like things can be shit, but you're still positive about what's going to happen after that.
Yeah, we'll get through it.
Yeah,
that kind of vibe is, yeah, like what in a good way. It's like, dude, like, this is really, I think this is where the community is getting tighter. Like, that's we thought like that a lot, is that, and I still think about it this way, because when you look at the amount of players that we have left in Axie, like, I would say those are the people that are the core believers. Right. Like, they believe in the vision. They're there. And I think just today we had just a few hours ago, we released a new event. And I think over 51,000 players have participated on chain in that, which is massive considering it's a bear market. Yeah. And I'm very, I think over maybe 170,000 Axies have been like released already, which is actually pretty insane. So I'm very happy about that. It's always good to see that people are interacting with the things that you're releasing.
So let's talk about the next stage, which is product market fit. So, like, how did you find product market fit, and what was the key things that took it from being like an interesting concept to it being an actual like viable product?
I think there was a combination of, like, the game was actually fun enough, and then there was the breeding game that hadn't really been used as well. So in Axie, right? So you have the battle game where you use your pets or to battle, right? Inside the battle game, and then you have the breeding game where you connect your Axies together. Now and then get a new one. And in the breeding game, like when you needed to breed your Axies on Ethereum, like that cost, I think, like $15 to $20 in fees. So that kind of had been unavailable for people for a long time, right? Due to, like, there was something called DeFi summer.
Yep.
Where people were doing all sorts of degen stuff on chain.
Yep.
I think 2020, So we were like, oh, we had known that we needed to scale for a long time. And we started seeing people were using like Axies. They use Uniswap. We started seeing, like, I think there was an article on Bankless that was written, which is one of the first ones by one of our community members. It's like, oh, I can actually make some money playing this game. And that was mid 2020. And then we were migrating over our Axies to Ronin network, which is our own blockchain that we created, which is an EVM chain. So very similar to Ethereum. So basically we could port over different type of like automated market maker. And we had all the smart contracts, and basically things were looking where that was a major unlock for players. So they could actually breed Axies without the gas fee.
So you're saying the key thing of product market fit was actually just reducing the cost.
Yeah, reducing the fees so that people could actually interacting with the products that we had released in a new way, because they were so expensive that they weren't able to breed enough Axies or to actually interact with the products, or to even buy Axies were so expensive.
Right.
Because there weren't enough Axies in the market for people to buy, because people weren't able to breed because there was so much like money that was being lost to Ethereum miners. So there was like a delta there that was then suddenly unlocked when we released Ronin network. So suddenly you could breed an Axie for $20 cheaper or something like that. More Axies started getting bred, and more people started getting the opportunity to play the game. They could buy it for cheaper, and then more players started coming in. More players were breeding, and as more players started playing the game, and then really kind of took off from there because people had never seen something like it. So that was kind of the real massive run up, which started, I think, early 2021.
So at this point, you had your own app on iOS and Android. You had...
Actually, we didn't have it. Actually, it's never even been on iOS and Android.
No, really? Okay.
No, it's only been on test flight there. Okay. So it's like maximum 10,000. And it's never been released on any Google Play or any store like that. It's only been on... you could just download the APK. So we did no marketing like that. Everything happened kind of through word of mouth when people started to understand that they can actually earn some tokens in the game. So what I would say is that it wasn't necessarily the game only that found product market fit. Like the game itself is okay, probably not amazing, but a lot of people loved it. Like a lot of people thought it was amazing, like great fun. But what really found product market fit was the economy and the game. That was amazing for people, right? They have never seen something like it.
So you've launched your own blockchain at this point, and you're starting to see some serious, and you've unlocked actually potentially quite a lot of latent demand, right? You've been building this latent demand on Ethereum. It's like building up like a dam, and then suddenly you get to a place where it's cheap enough that people can do it. You have this sudden bursting effect, which, not by design, but definitely will have had like this really interesting secondary order effect.
It was like a big part of the game was suddenly being unlocked that had been like behind bars for the longest period of time. So dam is a good analogy,
right?
For sure.
And so then what happens in the organization? You're now sort of probably taking on thousands of players every day. How's that affect?
So we were, I think, 30 people,
right?
Maybe 35 early in 2021. And like things started really taking off. I think what happened, I think I was on vacation, or like I was on vacation, but I was in summer 2021. Like I think in May, I was on my cabin, and then we saw a post on 4chan.
I was in my cabin.
Yeah, so I was there. And I had my computer. And then suddenly I got a message. Oh, there's a post on 4chan about. No, actually, sorry, that was 2020. Yeah. But that was actually the beginning of kind of really when things started. But this is like an important thing to see why the price of SLP suddenly spiked. So we saw a post on 4chan where people were trying there to pump SLP, which is called small love potion at the time.
Yep.
So they were writing that, hey, guys, small love potion is going to go up in price because it's tied to breeding Axies. And Axie Infinity has partnerships with Samsung, with Ubisoft, with all these other big companies, right? So it's very classic, like pump and dump.
Right.
And they were trying to use, because we hadn't released the AXS token, right? So they wanted something to speculate on. And then I think the SLP token increased 10x in like a day. And then they dumped, of course, but it still was higher than it was.
Right.
And that price increase for SLP, there was enough like attention and liquidity there that suddenly was now worth spending a lot of time inside the game. Right. So we started seeing that like very early in 2020. And then, that kind of led to the increase of price in 2021. And that's really when things started taking off. So at that time, it was very difficult because we got so many players in on a daily basis, and we didn't have not enough tools. We didn't have enough people to support them. And they didn't know anything about private keys. People were getting scammed. And we didn't even have like good enough support because we hadn't needed it, right? We didn't expect that it would be like that level of product market fit. And then the servers were shutting down. We were getting DDoSed. So like no sleep at all. And then, it was a pretty difficult time, but it was amazing, right? Because every time you wake up, like people were writing to me on my personal Facebook. They were hunting down my family on Facebook. Like I turned off everything, right? It was insane. It's really hard to see all of these messages. So I logged into our hello email, and I think I saw something like, 2,000, 3,000 emails in support of people who were like, hey, like, I don't know what I'm doing. What the hell is a private key? And then they were like, some people even wrote their private key in like open format in the email. I was like, what do I do with this thing? I'm like, I'm saving it. I'm like, dude, like, don't. So the level of education that people need when they are learning about crypto and what the hell is like, that's something we were not prepared for. Right. Now, of course, we have a very different like onboarding flow. Right. Like SkyMavis is now 230 people. So we have like a dedicated support team, HR, like everything is becoming like a big company. Yep. But at the time, it was nothing. It was incredibly difficult to scale from there.
And how did you choose what to prioritize at that point?
I mean, it's difficult, right? So I was doing some fundraising at the time too, which is also taking a lot of time. So I was closing I think late 2021, we closed that $150 million Series B round. So I was working on that.
Congratulations.
But at the same time, we were hiring and like we had our engineers working double time, trying to keep the servers up. In terms of prioritization, right? It's really like try to keep the lights on, I guess. That's what the main thing is. And then like hiring is something that we were struggling a lot with prioritizing, but we had to do it. So started really hiring a lot as well. But it's hard to explain because it was like this period from mid 2020 to I would say 18 months, which is like nonstop. Mm-hmm. Like it never stopped. But at the time, over that period of time, I think we did okay. Like looking back at it, I wish we had done many things differently. Right. But at the same time, there was a massive learning experience. And I think very unique to experience that level of like user scale when you're just not prepared for it at all. Because like we've gone through so many years of just like, hey, you get like one new user and you're like clapping, yay. You get another guy who's in the Discord and like, who are you? Right. And then suddenly to get like, we had the biggest Discord of all time, I think, at one point with over 800,000 people in it.
Wow.
Which is, that level of scale, and it happened in like a couple of months only.
Right. But you'd done some planning, right? Like, as in not planning, but like you'd already built your Discord community. You had like got your channels sorted. You'd worked out how to deal with spam to some extent. You'd like started the concept of like ambassadors or moderators. And like, obviously it had to scale massively, but having to do that from scratch from a new Discord versus having to do that when you'd already put some of that stuff in place, that must have at least helped.
Yeah. I think like if I were to go back and give ourselves some advice, I think, try to think scale. I think from the beginning, we always said that, we're doing unscalable things for now so that we can so that we can survive. Right. But at the same time, you need to think about like, what happens now if we hit like 1,000 new people? What's the first thing that they experience when they come into our community tomorrow? Like, can this thing scale at all or no? And from us, like probably didn't, but we somehow made it work because we were working, 18-hour days for the longest period of time. Yeah. So we kind of we forced it to work, but I'm sure a lot of people had a terrible experience at that time. And being accountable to that, I think is important. And like taking that as a good learning experience is very, very important. But for other, like setting up those Discord channels, like making sure that people have a smooth onboarding flow in there is good. But like Discord is not the end all be all, I would say. Like you need proper, proper website, you need proper understanding of like very clearly what are people doing. We didn't even have that either, right? We're making community YouTube videos that we were relying on. Oh, this is what you're going to do. And that in itself is also very risky, right? So I think a couple of YouTube videos with like 200,000 views from like a community member. Oh, this is how you set up your wallet. Like that's not okay because it's like you don't control that message. Right. And that person who's making that YouTube video, like if that influencer or that guy is your friend, then all is good. Yeah. But like in life and in crypto, these things, they change too. Like influencers that are your friends, they might change because they get paid by someone else who you're not willing to pay, right? So I think that's also something that we have a lot of experience with right now.
So I think that's an important lesson, which is anything that's your core message or anything that is your core tutorial stack, like own, because you need to make sure that you can always rely on being able to update it or change it.
I think it's okay to take some shortcuts here and there because sometimes you just have to. Right. But at the end of the day, from our perspective, there's just so much to go back and clean up. And now we're getting to the point where things are cleaned up. Like now we're looking forward. Now we have a nice content future plan and things are good. But yeah, it's like we've been here for almost 5 years, right? So if I look back at someone else almost starting now, it's a journey. It's a lot of fun, but a lot of hard work. And yeah, keeping that motivation up now when things are like looking very, very dark. I mean, it's difficult, right? But if you really believe in the industry and you really think that players deserve something more and that you can do better than we can, then there is no better time than now, right? Because this is now we're still in the moment of time before all of these professional, like even game studios, or probably in the DeFi space too, where like before the masses kind of come in. So the work that you do now can have an exponential impact in the future.
100%.
Like that's always how I've been thinking about 100%. It. I can easily work my ass off now because if a new part of the internet is being unlocked, then that means that the work we do now will have that impact in the future, and it's very motivating to think about it like that.
Right, and people don't realize how long it takes to find product market fit. If you start today, product market fit in 18 months, you're going to be like, if you've actually got true product market fit in 18 months, then you're doing really well. And so like,
I mean, that would be, that's massive, right? I think like a lot of people, like what kind of product, that it takes a long time to build a good product. And the bigger the total addressable market is, usually the product is a little bit more complex. Right. You can make like a small tool and then find product market fit for that. But the smaller it is, sometimes it's easier also to disrupt it. Right. You need good distribution. Like, yeah, I guess this has been like a startup journey more so only than a game journey for me, right? I'm working a lot on the startup company itself, right? From a Sky Mavis perspective, everything else that we're doing, from publishing different type of games, working on the Ronin network, building out different DeFi applications, like making sure that the vision for the company is like we're making a company that's here for decades. Like that's my vision right now. And kind of getting to that point has also been pretty difficult, right? Because you need to separate, like, what are you doing with your time? Is it Axie? Is it Sky Mavis? Right. And from our founder perspective, we have now people who are working specifically only for Axie and other people that are doing like the company corporate startup stuff.
So it's been a fascinating conversation. Alex, thank you so much for coming on the show. I think to close out, I'd love for you to just sort of give your, if someone is in right now thinking about building an NFT-based game, what would be your sort of like top tips to an entrepreneur who's just starting out to think about when they're going about building it?
Wow. I mean, it's very difficult because it depends on the background of that person. I think I'm going to give two pieces of advice here, because I still think you can do the community approach that we did for Axie, right? Because if you look at our experiences, like we didn't have hadn't been building games for, let's say, 20 years, which is what a lot of game entrepreneurs have been doing, right? Which is why when I was looking at the original game industry, I felt like it was so closed off and difficult to make something new. Right. Like there was this set recipe. I still think there's the opportunity to make like a community driven new intellectual property in the NFT space if you have the right intention and if you have great art and you are executing in a good way, like doing basically the Axie recipe. It's not 10,000 PFPs kind of. It's a little bit different than that, but you kind of need distribution and you need to separate yourselves. But a lot of that can be done by hard work.
Right.
So I guess like even for people that don't have experience, if you have a team of people who are passionate about the same thing, and you have some, like, of course you need good engineers, you need some good artists, and you need to have an idea for the game you want to make. But I think like there's still the opportunity to kind of start building now and then do some NFT sale moving forward in the future when the bull market is on, and then take that and like build a company. But that also means that the difficulty is like you have all of these expectations from the community that people are very like, oh, you just sold some asset, but you're not doing anything like that. You need to work around that. So I think that's like the advice for like non-game specific people. I think it still can be done to build that NFT IP, but it's getting harder and harder by the day. So just got to get started. For people that have game experience and some NFT, like they're interested in it and they need some Web3 knowledge, I think the best part is just kind of start building the game and partner with an existing like publisher or existing like blockchain, something like either Polygon or Ronin, of course. Like we're looking specifically for mobile game studios, and then work with that party to not sell NFTs too early, raise money from them and like build a true good go-to-market. And then you can actually try to, then it's easier, I would say. It's an easier path, but like from a Sky Mavis and Ronin perspective, like we won't be working like that closely with just like pure non-game specific folks, because it's so hard to make a good game that you really need to break through like that. It's very, very difficult, and you need to have that insane passion and really just keep hustling like crazy if you're going to do the community route. But for like normal game entrepreneurs, it's easier now to partner with someone. You don't have to build out all the tools. They're getting there. And for this like NFT, like I would say community member, if you have a classic IP, then you can partner with someone afterwards once you have something to sell or to promote, I would say. So you still need to hustle and build that core community. I guess that's kind of the advice I would give.
So hustle and build the community and then find partners who can sort of give you distribution or money to sort of accelerate beyond that.
That's for the community members or for the NFT community members. For the traditional game partners, like they should just like pitch their game to either someone who's in the industry, like start building that and then like you raise money from them rather than raising from the community and then selling NFTs when the game is ready. I think that's the most healthy approach.
That's super helpful. Thank you so much, Alex. And I'm looking forward to speaking to you again sometime soon.
Thanks for having me, Piers.
More utility, then you better call on these guys. I'm going radical, I'm going Radix, I'm going radical, I'm going Radix. Hyperspeed DeFi, never on a decline. Building the future, I feel like a savage.